I guess I've become conscious during the last couple of days that maybe my approach is something of a dinosaur approach and I'm part of the problem, and we have enough. But anyway, I'm hoping that we can displace a bit of coal that's burnt somewhere, or a bit of oil, or stop another thermal power station being built. So my change report is about local renewable generation in North Canterbury. So I'd ask you to imagine this: a community-owned power company providing locally generated renewable energy for its owners and at competitive prices. And I'd like to say that this is all totally innovative and my idea, but unfortunately I can't. It's realistically, this is the way that New Zealand's power system was developed. So I've called it a back to the future scenario. So firstly, who are we? As Karen referred to the Waimakariri, Hurley and Kaikoura district councils before, and that's, does this work? Yeah, that's the area covered by our blue map there. That's the area that Main Power covers with its lines networks. We are a distribution company, we're community owned, we have a very strong community focus. In our area there's 32,500 customers, and that's connections rather than people. They consume up to 90 megawatts at peak, and they consume 550 gigawatt hours a year, which has been growing every year, often due to a bit of overspill from Christchurch, and as you know, people move to lifestyle blocks out there, and developments of Newtown like Pegasus, and irrigation development. An important thing to note is that there's a great void of any generation in this part of New Zealand, and I think we've got down here we've got the Coleridge Power Station. Up in Blenheim we have the branch and maybe one other on the Waihopai, on the Wairau and the Cobb, but this whole area of New Zealand, must remember not to point with my hand down here. This whole area of New Zealand, there's been no generation ever developed there, and the only other place like that I've noticed in New Zealand is the east coast of the North Island, you know, Gisborne, Wairau. There's this sort of great void of power generation that's all covered by long stringy lines networks. So going back to the past, and this is one example. It's one example that I'm familiar with, it, having lived in this area for some time. The Otago Central Electric Power Board started in 1922 and it ran through until 1999 when the electricity reforms forced a big split. It was serving 30,000 people, 12,000 homes. They had about 10 hydro stations when they were, you know, at 1999 they had the 10 hydro stations. They had about 25 megawatts of power available. That whole area from 1922 to 1957, it was running separated from the grid, running independent, but they got the grid there in 1957. I presume that came with the Roxburgh Hydro. And an important thing here was that this power board was probably the antithesis of the reasons why the electricity reforms were brought in, the Bradford reforms as they're called. You know, those reforms were there about breaking up monopoly power that the local distributors supposedly had, and introducing competition via the retailers. Now, for its monopoly power, I understand the power board there was supplying some of the lowest cost electricity in the country. The final point there, that the original stations were built for industrial use. In fact, mining was what caused the stations in Teviot to be built, and the Roaring Meg and the Kawara Gorge. So effectively they got a head start from being subsidised, which is pretty true of most of our hydro generation in this country. So that was the past. Now we're on to the future. This is Main Power's future we're talking about here. We're looking to develop a portfolio of small hydro and small wind, solar and biomass are possibilities that we're keeping our eyes on, doing some work with Susan's team on a solar hot water package solution. We've got a 10-year program ahead of us, and it's only 10 years because that's all we've thought about so far. It could go on and on. We need to spend, to develop what we want to, we've got to find $15 to $20 million a year to spend, and that's allowing for about one hydro and one wind project each year, which is a tall order. And by the end of the 10 years, we'd hope to be supplying 300 gigawatt hours of that 550 that our community currently uses. But because of the expectations of demand growth, that'll only be about a third by the time we get there. Just to prove we're not all talk, we have made a start. And this is our little Cleardale hydro scheme. It's on the banks of the Rakai, which is outside of our region, but it was a sort of serendipitous relationship with a farmer in that he was wanting some irrigation, looking for someone to help him do some power with it. It's a 900 kilowatt Pelton turbine. It has been made here in Christchurch. There's some stats about the scheme there. Suffice to say, it's a fairly small scheme. It doesn't take much out of the river, and the river being on a shingle fan generally disappeared below ground anyway. Just trying to think what else I wanted to tell you about that. Not much. Oh yeah, no, the important thing, it's been commissioned right now. So it's been built and it should be pumping its power in within the next month. Thought I'd look at a few barriers. This isn't easy, what we're proposing to do. And the first barrier is resource availability. Obviously with water, you've got to be somewhere where there's a river and there's some height, there's some head to use. And contrary to popular belief, the wind is not created equal all over North Canterbury. And you just can't afford to build stuff where the wind doesn't blow strong. Even if the resource is there, if you don't have the landowner behind you and you can't get a landowner agreement, then you're stuck, you're going nowhere. Competing use for resources, now this could be by other developers, or it could be by irrigators. That's something we've come across. For irrigators, the water is very valuable, much more valuable than it is for hydro generation, and farmers are naturally very protective of their water. Money is a barrier. 2 or 3 years ago, you could have banks would be calling me up every month or so saying, "Can we help you out with your projects?" And then there was the global financial crisis, and no one rings anymore. And I understand it's getting very hard to get. Long-term off-take agreements and the liquid hedge market, they're kind of subsets of money, and they're issues for a lot of small developers where if you can't retail the power yourself and you can't get a main buyer main retailer to buy it, then you have trouble getting money from the bank. If you want to retail yourself, then you need the ability to buy hedges, because a wind farm is intermittent power or variable power, and you need to have access to power from other suppliers, which the main retailers tend to hold on to fairly jealously. Legal matters of national importance. They are natural resources. We're talking about exploiting natural resources, and I've only got 1 minute to go. I've got a long way to go. Matters of national importance. Perhaps I won't go into this. Water, yes, there is competition for water, and it's a sensitive subject, especially in Canterbury. NIMBYism, I just wanted to capture something. There's always a better place to put something. Anywhere you try and build something, someone will come along and say, "No, I don't like that place for whatever reason, and somewhere else is better." There's a bunch of things enabling this, and these go some way to deal with the barriers that I mentioned before, but I won't elaborate on them. Perhaps to say the national grid is surprisingly important. No one really likes it. There's pylons and things everywhere, but unless we have a strong grid, we're not going to be able to make full use of renewables spread all around the country. Somebody else gave you that message yesterday. Opportunities. Despite the the tension between irrigation and hydro, there are opportunities for things to be built together. This isn't our scheme, but it's a nice picture of someone using irrigation to generate power. This is an opportunity for us in the Balmoral Forest area, or an opportunity for someone. Retailing is an opportunity that's been brought about by the Electricity Act reforms for lines companies. And in fact, the Electricity Act, the last year's, or was it this year's Electricity Act, this year's, was aimed at getting lines companies back into generation, back into retail, greater competition. Now, Main Power's looked at this. We're looking at it very seriously. We don't know whether we'll do it yet. It's not really important that we do it, but it is important that there is more competition in our area, because the incumbent retailer is just becoming a bit complacent, we think. Smart grids are another opportunity. We heard Stephen Drew talking about the smart grids yesterday, and I've run out of time. But I would like to say that for conclusions, we are a community-owned company. We have this vision of local generation for local supply. We haven't done much to date. It's been 5 years to get that small scheme running. The sign of change should grow in our district and spread to others.